You ever had that feeling deep down in your gut that something's just wrong? Like the air suddenly gets heavier and every shadow seems to be watching you? I didn't have that feeling at first. Not that night. Not when I was 12, sitting alone in a house that felt safe, maybe even too safe. But looking back, that night was the one where everything changed, where the quiet streets and familiar faces faded away, leaving me completely exposed. If you're listening closely, you might just feel it too, that creeping unease that starts when you least expect it. I grew up in a small town, the kind of place where everyone knows your name and nothing much ever happens. Quiet streets, yards big enough to play in without ever seeing a soul, neighbors who'd wave as you passed by. My house was in one of those sleepy neighborhoods, the kind you'd picture when you think of safety. And honestly, that's why my parents felt okay leaving me alone sometimes. I was 12, maybe 13, and they'd just started trusting me enough to stay home by myself for a few hours. It felt like a big deal at the time. That weekend started like any other. The sun was dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in soft shades of orange and purple. My parents were heading out for the night, a dinner with friends, I think. They left me some money for pizza, gave me a quick reminder to lock the doors and not answer if anyone came knocking. It was routine, nothing out of the ordinary. I remember feeling excited, a whole night to myself with just video games and the freedom to be lazy. That's all a 12-year-old wants, right? The house smelled like summer. Warm air drifting in through cracked windows, the faint scent of freshly cut grass lingering from earlier that day. I kicked off my shoes and settled into the couch, controller in hand. James Bond was my favorite. I'd played Nightfire 100 times already, but that night, it was like escaping into another world. Safe, familiar, under control. The streets outside were quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you feel alone but not lonely. The kind that lets you breathe without worry. Or so I thought. As I played, I kept the front door locked, the TV volume just loud enough to block out the occasional creak or wind gust. I told myself it was just the house settling, the kind of noises old houses make. I wasn't scared, not yet. But even in the quietest places, shadows have a way of moving in when you least expect them. Sometimes safety is just a fragile illusion. The night felt calm, almost too calm. I was halfway through my third playthrough of Nightfire when the doorbell rang. It was that familiar small chime that usually meant one thing: pizza. My heart jumped a little with excitement. Dinner was here. I grabbed the money from the kitchen counter, $20, exactly what my parents had left me, and headed downstairs. The house was dim, with only the kitchen light on, casting long shadows across the tile floor. The door creaked as I opened it just enough to peek outside. The pizza guy was there, but something about him didn't sit right with me. He was older than I expected, maybe in his 30s. His beard was long and scruffy, the kind that looked like it hadn't seen a comb in weeks. His eyes hid behind thick glasses, and a black trucker's hat shadowed his face. He gave me a half smile as I handed over the money. As he counted out the change, he looked up, then glanced past me into the house. And then he asked, almost too casually, "You alone here?" The question froze me. There was something cold and off about the way he said it, like he already knew the answer, or worse, like he hoped I was. My parents had drilled it into me from the time I was little. Never tell strangers you're home alone. Never invite them in. Be cautious, always. I wanted to say no. I wanted to slam the door and run back inside, but I didn't. Instead, I lied, saying, "My parents are on their way home." It felt like the safest answer, even if it was a stupid one. He didn't say anything else, just handed me the pizza box and the change, nodded, and left. The door closed behind him with a soft click, and I breathed a little easier. I locked the door and went back upstairs with the pizza, trying to shake off the weird feeling that settled in my chest. I told myself I was just imagining things. Maybe he was having a bad day. Maybe I was just tired. But the night had other plans. About an hour later, just as I was switching games, the doorbell rang again. Twice. Then again. The sound echoed through the quiet house, cutting through the silence like a sharp knife. I paused the game and froze. No one was supposed to be here. My parents wouldn't be back for hours. My heart pounded so loud I thought it might burst. I crept to the door, peering through the peephole. No one. But then a voice called out, low and urgent. "Hey, I need help. Please, can I use your phone?" I didn't recognize the voice. Fear curled in my stomach like ice. I whispered, "Who is this?" But the only answer was the same desperate plea. "Please, I just need to use your phone." I was scared. So scared. I wanted to hide. I didn't want to look through the window, but I knew he was watching, waiting for me to open the door. I retreated upstairs, heart pounding in my ears, trying to tell myself not to open it, not for anything. Then a hard bang on the door. "Wait, please, I need help." I stopped in my tracks. He had seen me. Through the glass he was staring, waiting. The outline of his head was clear, even if his eyes were hidden in shadow. I ran as fast as I could to my parents' room, the only place with a phone upstairs. My hands trembled as I dialed my mom's number. My mom answered on the second ring. Her voice was calm, a little slurred. I knew she'd been enjoying her night out. But the moment I told her there was someone at the door asking to come in, everything changed. Her tone sharpened, and suddenly she was alert, focused. "Did you open the door?" she asked. I swallowed hard and told her the truth. Yes, I had, but only to get the pizza. I mentioned the strange question he'd asked, about me being home alone. My mom's voice tightened. "Did anyone else know you were alone?" she pressed. I hesitated, then told her about the pizza guy's question. The doorbell rang again, twice, and panic bubbled up inside me. The guy wasn't leaving. "Stay in your parents' room," she said firmly. "Lock the door, don't open it for anyone, we're calling the police." I nodded, gripping the receiver like it was my lifeline. I could hear muffled voices in the background, the low murmur of other people, probably the restaurant where they were. They had to step outside to get better reception. I sat on the floor, pressed against the bedroom wall, listening as the night stretched on. The windows were cracked open, the warm summer air drifting in gently, carrying with it the scent of the backyard, freshly mowed grass, the faint hint of flowers blooming. But then I heard it, the gate. A soft, almost silent creak as it opened. Just a crack, but enough to send a chill running down my spine. Someone was coming through the side gate, the one that led to the backyard. I whispered it to my mom, my voice barely audible. "The gate, it's opening." "Stay quiet," she urged. "Don't make a sound. Stay in the dark." The seconds dragged by like hours. I closed my eyes, trying to steady my breathing. "What if he tries to get in through the window?" I whispered, unable to stop the panic creeping into my voice. "Don't talk. Just wait for the police," she said softly, but I could hear the tension in her voice. Suddenly, footsteps, slow, deliberate, echoed from downstairs. Someone was inside the house. My heart nearly stopped. I told my mom, my voice a trembling whisper. She screamed into the phone, something urgent, probably telling the police to hurry. Then she told me to hide under the bed. I crawled beneath the bed frame, pulling the blankets down with me, trying to make myself as small and invisible as possible. The tiny lock on the bedroom door felt like the thinnest barrier between me and the danger just outside. Then the footsteps started climbing the stairs. They stopped in the hallway outside the room. I could hear the faintest breath, the shifting weight as the intruder tried the doorknob. It rattled, tried to turn, locked. A few taps, a pause, then more tries. Then a soft knock. No words, no warning. And then silence. The footsteps retreated, moving down the hall, then downstairs, fading into the shadows below. I stayed frozen, holding my breath, trying not to cry, afraid even the slightest noise would give me away. Minutes passed like years. The house was too quiet. I didn't dare move. Then, finally, my mom's voice on the phone, low and steady. "The police are here. Stay put. Don't open the door." I waited, every nerve screaming, when suddenly heavy boots thundered up the stairs, a voice calling my name. "Hey, it's the police. Open up." Relief washed over me like a tidal wave. I unlocked the door and 2 officers stepped in, calm but alert. 2 more were downstairs. The back door was wide open, the sliding glass door left ajar, the intruder's entrance. My throat went dry as I recounted everything I'd seen and heard, my suspicion about the pizza guy included. My parents were still on their way home, and by the time they arrived, the police were finishing their report. That night changed everything. It wasn't just about being scared anymore, it was about knowing how fragile safety can be. The moments after the police arrived felt surreal, like I was trapped in a nightmare I couldn't wake from. Their presence was a relief, yes, but it also meant the danger had been real, that someone had invaded my home while I was alone and vulnerable. The officers moved through the house methodically. One asked me to show him where the intruder had tried to get in. I led him to the bedroom door, the lock still trembling from the force used against it. Then we walked through the dark hallways, stepping cautiously into my sister's room, and then into the living room where the back door stood open. It was terrifying to see just how easily someone could have slipped inside. The sliding glass door was pushed far enough that a grown man could squeeze through without difficulty. The back gate was ajar, a clear sign that the intruder had planned this. I told the officers everything, the odd delivery guy, his strange question, the knocking and banging, and the way he watched me through the glass. They listened carefully, taking notes, their faces unreadable. They told me they'd investigate, but honestly, I wasn't sure what to believe anymore. When my parents finally got home, the house felt different. The safety I'd known was gone. My mom hugged me tight and my dad paced, angry and helpless. They made phone calls, talked to neighbors, tried to find answers. The next night, they took me to the pizza place to see if I could identify the man. I looked carefully, trying to remember every detail: the scruffy beard, the glasses, the black trucker's hat. The manager pointed to an employee named Phil who was out on delivery that night. But after telling the story, the manager said there was no way it could have been Phil. He asked us to leave. My parents were furious. They refused to give that place our business ever again. We waited in the parking lot, hoping the man would show up again, but he never did. My parents suspected the manager had warned him, but we never knew for sure. The police report was filed, but without solid evidence, no charges were made. Lawyers didn't want to take the case. The feeling of helplessness settled over us like a shadow. It took a long time before my parents felt comfortable leaving me alone again. That night stayed with me. The fear, the uncertainty, the knowledge that someone had been so close. I still wonder who he really was. Was it the pizza guy? Someone connected to him? Or a stranger who knew exactly when to strike? Whatever it was, it changed me. After what felt like an eternity, the house finally settled into a tense calm. The police were there, flashing their badges and reassuring me that I was safe now. Their presence filled the rooms, pushing away the shadows that had crept in just hours before. The officers stayed for a while, taking statements, checking every window and door. They told me and my parents about their plan to patrol the neighborhood more frequently and to keep an eye out for anyone suspicious. Still, the unease lingered in the air, thick and stubborn. My parents stayed with me that night, their voices low and protective, their eyes never quite leaving the doors and windows. I lay awake, the silence broken only by the occasional rustle of a police radio outside. For days after, I found myself jumping at every noise: the creak of a floorboard, the distant bark of a dog, even the wind brushing against the house. The safe little town I once knew seemed different, colder, darker, unpredictable. It wasn't just the fear of that night anymore. It was the knowledge that the world wasn't always safe, that people you trusted, places you thought were familiar, could suddenly become threats. My parents did everything they could to make me feel secure. They changed the locks, installed extra lights, even set up a security system. But I knew deep down that nothing would erase the memory of those footsteps in the hallway or the face at the door. I still think about that night often, about the man who asked if I was alone, about how close he came, and about the feeling that even now, he might be watching from somewhere just out of sight. Sometimes I wonder if I was lucky, if things could have been much worse. But I also know that from that night on, I wasn't the same kid who sat alone in that quiet house. Something inside me changed. A wariness, a sense of caution that never quite fades. And maybe that's the scariest part of all. Looking back, it's strange to think how one night can change everything. How a single moment, a question, a knock, a shadow, can shatter the feeling of safety you once took for granted. I still live in that same house, in that same small town. But the peace I once knew feels fragile now, like a thin glass waiting to be broken. Sometimes, when the wind howls just right, or when the lights flicker late at night, I can't help but wonder, who was that man? Was he just a lost soul looking for help? Or something darker? Someone who knew exactly when to strike? The police never found him. The pizza place denied any connection, and the lawyers told us there wasn't enough evidence. But I know what I saw, I know what I heard, and I know that sometimes the people you trust the least are the ones standing right outside your door. So if you're listening to this now, take a moment to check your locks. Look around you. Listen to the silence. Because safety can be an illusion, and sometimes the shadows are closer than you think.